Hey everybody, it's Rod with the PhotoFair coming back at you with another video. Last time we talked about a vintage lens, the dual range Summicron. This time, I'm going to talk about a modern lens. In this case, the Canon 8-15 zoom fisheye lens. However, this applies to Nikon and Sony as well because these lenses are available for a wide variety of cameras. This particular one is for Canon EF DSLRs. I, of course, have an adapter on it that allows me to use it on my EOS R5. These lenses can actually perform a wide variety of tasks. Back in the day, before they even had zoom fisheyes, there were two types of fisheyes typically that were available from just about every manufacturer. There was the most common one, which was usually a 15 or a 16 millimeter focal length, usually an f2.8 or an f3.5, and it covered 180 degrees across the diagonal of the frame. And that gave you roughly 150 degrees on the horizontal and roughly 135 on the vertical as far as your actual coverage. I'll put the real numbers up here. And that was great. You could go out and get some really cool, they were ultra wide angle, even wider than Nikon's 13 millimeter lens that they had in the 70s or Canon's 14 2.8L. That's all I really want to go into on the fisheye there, but that was real common. And then they had these fisheye lenses where you got a circular image in the middle of the frame. And so what those lenses did is they gave you 180 degrees all the way around. So you were getting a true 180 degree fisheye. Well, because cameras use a square shaped frame, obviously there was going to be vignetted corners. And in the case of a 3:2 format, like full frame digital cameras and 35 millimeter film cameras had, there was a lot of black space around the image. Those were great for those occasional cool shots, maybe a little gimmicky, but used correctly, a circular fisheye image could be really creative. But it's not a lens you're really going to use a lot. And a lot of people paid a lot of money for these circular fisheyes, and they'd come out of the camera bag once a year or once every 2 years. Not the best use of your hard-earned money. If you're working pro and you just want to have every lens in the bag, great. But for, amateur photographers and just people that were just serious, about photography but didn't have an unlimited budget, that was a tough pill to swallow. And buying a cheap one usually resulted in images that weren't quite as sharp and had color fringing and other problems. So a lot of people opted for that, what they used to call, again, the full frame fisheye, the one that filled the entire image area. They make these for APS-C cameras. They make these for Micro Four Thirds cameras, and they certainly make them for full frame cameras as well. And that, again, gives you a diagonal 180 degrees. About 10, 15 years ago, they came out with the idea of, hey, why don't we put it all in one lens? So this is an 8-15. 8 giving you the full circular image, 180 degrees in all directions, and 15 giving you that roughly 180 across the diagonal. So now you have the best of both worlds. You're going to pay a little bit more money for the zoom lens, but this is an L series premium Canon lens, weather sealing, the best coatings, the best optics, and that's the case with other camera maker versions of this lens too. The Nikon one, it's their ED glass, it's a good lens. And honestly, buying a mid-grade circular fisheye and a mid-grade full frame fisheye, buying the two lenses would actually cost you as much or maybe even a little more than just buying this one lens, and it's a better lens. So I find it to be a good value. There's more to this than just the fisheye, though. One of the things that these lenses can do is give you an exotic rectilinear image as well. And that's thanks to modern software that we have today. What the manufacturers did when they were making, Nikon made a 13, and then Canon made a 14. And even today, we have lenses like the IRIX 11. I did a video on the IRIX 11. It's a great lens, posted up there in the corner for you. But these are intended to straighten out those lines and not give you a fisheye effect, to actually keep horizontal and vertical lines parallel like they're supposed to be. And so that takes a lot of optical engineering to do that correct. and they are real expensive. They're a little bit less expensive in the modern era because we've got the technology to design these things with advanced computers and all of that, and all the technology that's moved forward in optics, but they're still expensive lenses. Well, one of the things you can do with one of these fisheyes, if you have Photoshop or Lightroom or other software that's similar, is you can actually straighten out the bent lines. Now, there's a little bit of a trick to doing it, and I want to kind of show you guys a little bit of that. I like Lightroom for this particular application because Lightroom just does it for you. When you load that image into Lightroom and you hit apply corrections with one button, it'll straighten the lines out. Now, you don't want to do that for the circular image because obviously that's going to look like crap. But there is a technique for using this lens between 12 millimeter and 15 millimeter and getting a ridiculously wide angle of view. In fact, substantially wider than the IRIX 11 millimeter rectilinear, and it straightens all the lines out. A couple of caveats to that. Number one, it works better with a high resolution camera. My R5, for example, 45 megapixels. Sony A7R4, 61 megapixels. A Nikon Z7, 45 megapixels. It's going to work better with that because a lot of pixels get destroyed in the process of straightening that out. So if you're doing it with a 20 megapixel camera, you're going to get a lot of pixel destruction, and so it's going to lose a lot of its quality out on the edges. Even with the high resolution cameras, the edges, you give up a little bit on the edges. So it's not quite as good as an actual rectilinear lens. But you can get what I would call the apparent angle of view of like a 9 millimeter or a 10 millimeter on a full frame camera. Maybe close to a 9. I don't know of anyone that makes a rectilinear 9 millimeter lens for a full frame camera. I don't know if that exists. So I know a 10 does. Voigtlander's got a 10 millimeter for like an M mount that's extremely wide. And the corners on that lens are pretty sketchy. I've shot with that lens. But with the fisheye, taking it down to around 12 and a half millimeter, and then just loading it up in Photoshop and hitting the corrections button, the images are actually not bad. And now I'll show you some of just how it works in Lightroom. It's a little more difficult to straighten out, do fisheye corrections with Photoshop. It's kind of a complicated multi-step process. You're going to have to be kind of an expert at Photoshop to do it in Photoshop. Anyone can do it in Lightroom, super easy. And there are other software products out there that are designed to straighten out fisheye lenses for you, Fisheye Hemi and a few others. But I just find Lightroom does a really good job. So let's take a look at how that looks in Lightroom. Okay, this is our benchmark image. This was taken with the Canon RF 14 to 35L at 14 f5.6. That's the benchmark. Now, this is corrected. You see here, Lightroom gives you profile corrections. So if I undo that, you'll see the lens has a tendency to vignette. It is quite a bit wider, but the profile corrections are designed to take care of the barrel distortion that's in there, take care of the vignetting. You click it, it tightens up. Now, what my discovery is, because I compared this to a 14 millimeter 2.8 Canon L lens that a friend of mine has, it's pretty close. They're both giving you about the same angle of view once you correct the distortion. So this is a legit rectilinear 14. Okay, so let's move over here. We've got a 15 millimeter, right? 15 millimeters. You get a lot more in the image because it's 180 degrees corner to corner. The lens down here, a little tiny bit soft right down in this corner. Pretty sharp though over here, right? I mean, it's not bad. Look at all that coverage. Well, when we defish this, we're going to lose some of that. So I'm going to go ahead and just click this Enable Profile Corrections. It will now correct the barrel distortion. You'll notice I lost quite a bit of the image there, okay? But I've got more than that Canon 14, even though I'm at 15. So I can crop this. I can say, you know what? I don't need that extra space. I'm going to tighten this up. I'm going to make this image look more like that 14. Maybe come up just a wee bit there. So now I've cropped it. So now I have similar angle of view. I had the benefit of being able to move the image around and crop it a little more favorably. I'd rather have a little bit more floor than ceiling. But let's compare it. We got the same rough angle of view here. Again, we got a little more ceiling on this one, but there it is. This was taken from the exact, on a tripod, just swapped the lenses. But the reason the perspective looks a little different here is because I cropped it and moved it down. But you can see the coverage. Now, sharpness, a little bit soft here at the foot of the table, but if I recall, it's also a little soft on the 14 L. I think this is a little sharper. I think you'd agree this has got a little more detail than this one, which kind of fallen apart a little bit there, but not too bad. But the rest of it on the bottles here where you see detail, pretty good. You can get away with this in a pickle. And that's kind of what the whole point of this video was, to show you how these zoom fisheyes give you the fun and sort of creativity of a fisheye, either the circular full frame like you have here, or the standard, what we used to call a full frame fisheye, what you see here. And then with just a little quick correction and some creative cropping, it becomes a rectilinear ultra wide lens, all in one package. You can find these 8 to 15 zooms used, at least the Canons, for $800 or $900. They still sell it new for $1,250. And that's a lot of lens when you factor in a little bit of work in Lightroom and how much lens you can get. And you can go wider if you needed to. I could undo that crop and just say, you know what? I'm not going to crop it, and just reset the crop. And that's like 11 millimeter IRIX wide out of an 8 to 15 zoom. So anyway, that's kind of what I got on how easy it is. You got to admit, that's pretty easy to do. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for you. That's all I got for you today. Don't forget, PhotoFair coming up in just a couple of weeks on March 25th at the Newark Pavilion in Newark, California. There's a great show in Tucson, Arizona the week before us on the 19th, and then a great show after us on April 1st up in Kent, Washington, near Seattle. So you got 3 photo shows in 3 weeks on the West Coast. We have other shows scheduled already for the Photo Fair this year in June, in September in Portland, and then back here at the Newark Pavilion in November. So go to photofair.com and check out all the dates. We do have a special guest. Yaomen Chen will be giving a demonstration. Got info up here for you on that at the next show on March 25th. Hope to see you there, and right back here on YouTube for the next video.